Sounds good. So, tell me a little bit about Goldblatt. As you got started here, the inspiration for other songs. Do they also come from true life events like that, or where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, it's so varied. Sometimes it's something that just literally you come across, like that coffee shop in LA, where it's like you get this idea and you say, hey, this is great for a song. Other times it really. It's the process is so stream of consciousness. I mean, you pick up a guitar, you start playing something, and it's not until deeper into the process that you really understand exactly what it is you're writing about. It's almost like being hypnotized in that sense. And in music, you're just kind of opening yourself up to whatever the universe is giving you, and it's up to you later. Sometimes it's up to other people to figure it out. And I've had times where I've written a seemingly coherent song that I still wasn't sure what it was about. It could have been about 2 or 3 different things, and then finally going into the studio and doing the final cuts, then it's like, hey, now I get it. So it's very, there's a certain mystery to it, which is what keeps it interesting in many ways.
So do you find that then, because you talked about going to the studio there, do you find that you have the whole song, because it almost sounded like you didn't have everything really put together until you got in the studio, and then it all gels together? Do you have everything already formulated before you get into the studio?
It really varies. I mean, sometimes the song is basically done, and it's really a matter of just getting the band together and figuring out how you want to interpret it vibe-wise. Other times, it's you have the core structure and the core hook in place, and really the fundamental anchoring lyrics to work with. But songs continually evolve, so especially if you're just writing them on an acoustic guitar. By the time you get to figuring out what the vibe is that the band gives to it, and you start layering it, so it often evolves into a different direction than you originally thought. And because of that, it's a lot of it's pretty important to continually stay open to allowing new ideas to come in, particularly lyrically, because the content really moves a lot during the course of the song, because it's something that starts out as a simple just voice and guitar piece, where the lyrics obviously make sense in that context. You start putting in spacey sounds and putting real muscular choruses behind it. So they said, well, this lyric might actually fit better than that. So it's really about constantly staying open and allowing the music to shift. It's almost like it's almost something akin to, like, you ever see people doing Tai Chi, where just the energy just moves them around, in unexpected ways. And the song is almost kind of like that too. It has a certain core to it, but it shifts and it'll move this way and it'll move that way. It's really important to be flexible in the process and just allow that, allow the energy to guide the song, the movement of the energy to guide the song, rather than trying to constrain it and putting it into the box, because it'll sound artificial that way.
And in the studio for the recording process, do you use the same producer, or who's producing?
No, it really varies. I mean, some of it, and we try to change that. Well, we don't always change it from album to album. Sometimes with our debut album, we have 4 different producers we work with for different tracks, because it almost seems like certain producers are almost a better fit for a particular type of sound that you're trying to get.
So, do you feel that the producers' take on things changes or evolves the song a lot more from where you started? Like, how does that end result come about from where you really started, using the different producers that you have?
I mean, first of all, having good producers, like having good coaches and athletes. I mean, it's really, we always find that it's an absolutely essential part of the process. I mean, in that sense, it's another band member, and in a sense, the producer has to rise above the band, because each of the members are going to have their own opinions on things, and the producer certainly has got to be a rep, and just a tastemaker, a guiding set of ears to give you a sense of, hey, this is working, this isn't working. Because when it's your song, it's so easy to lose yourself in the process, and just, particularly when it's repetitive, you just latch onto certain things that, not necessarily because it's yours per se, but because you've heard it so many times, it just seems like it should be the way to do it. And when you have a fresh set of ears approaching the song, it's say, hey, change this chord maybe, and this chord should be more developed. So it's really, I mean, I'm a big proponent of trust your producer and let your producer's instincts guide the process.
So in the studio, what's your mindset like in there? When you actually get in there and you start playing and recording, outside of what the producer's doing, what's your mindset in the studio?
First of all, you've got to go in. You've got to believe in the material going in. It's not. I mean, some bands do just go in with a blank template and really just write in the studio and jam in the studio, and sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. I always like going in with having 15, 20 songs to choose from, and then just kind of flushing out different approaches, different ideas, and to get a sense of what's gelling. Because what may end up being a really solid song doesn't necessarily. The creative chemistry may not necessarily be in the room on that particular day to allow that song to be what it could be, and sometimes you set it aside and record it 2 or 3 years later. But fundamentally, you have to be confident in the material going in, and the material doesn't have to be finished. Again, it can be, you can just have a couple core riffs, a few core hooks, but you really have to believe in what you're bringing into the studio. That's really, I think, really, really key, because if you go in there with a certain level of uncertainty, the sessions are going to be tentative, and you don't want your music to be tentative. You want your music to be true and kind of come from your core, because otherwise it's not going to be true to the listener.
So is music something that you, when you were younger, you thought you'd be doing? At what point did you really take it to this level?
It's really, it's kind of in my late teens I realized that this is something I want to do, and I've moved in and I've shifted in and out of music professionally for a whole host of different reasons. So it's it's not any different from being a writer, being a painter, being a sculptor. If you have that in you, if you've got those things you need to get out, it's a part of who you are, it's a part of your core. Now, whether you do it as a hobbyist, whether you do it professionally, it doesn't matter. It's just you either are or you aren't, and if you are, then you just have to decide how you can make that as important part of your life as possible. And there are a lot of great musicians that don't do this full time either. Most of us don't do this full time. Most of us have. I've got all this stuff going on outside of music too, that you use to pay bills when records aren't selling. So, but if it's in your soul, if it's in your bones, you've got to do it one way or the other.
So, talking about doing other things outside of music, what are those 5 things outside of music that you really love to do the most?
I can't say them all in public. My mother might not appreciate it.
Should we bleep?
No, it's just, I like staying curious. I like traveling. One of the great things about being a musician is you do get to travel a lot. I love being in other places, meeting new people, seeing new sights, seeing new tastes. I love food, and I love to cook. I like being in a very different part of the world and just really seeing the number one, the commonality that we all have as people, that we just have a lot of the same basic needs, just not physiological needs, but also just emotional, spiritual, social needs, and how those are translated by different cultural filters. So for me, it's not. I don't think 5 things per se. It's more about just being open to new experiences all the time, and it's just being a sponge and taking that in.
So you mentioned that something that you do enjoy though is cooking.
I love cooking.
What style of food, or what's your favorite dish that you would be making? If you were home right now.
Well, first I learned to cook in Italy. When I lived there as a student actually. And I had this little old Italian lady who was probably 70 at the time teaching me how to cook. And she sees this poor young American boy far away from his mother who is surely going to starve on his own. And so that's where I learned to cook. So it's still Italian food that I gravitate towards. But being here in New York, you're exposed to so much. You can find every ingredient you want. So invariably, I'll want to try this Japanese dish, this Chinese dish, this Indian dish. But at the end, it all comes back to Italian.
Oh, nice. So,
come over for dinner sometime.
Thanks for the offer. I'm going to.
Over rock and roll dinner.
Favorite. Yeah. So you're traveling a lot. You're here in New York for CMJ. What do you expect out of this week being here in New York for seeing?
Well, so first of all, we had a great showcase yesterday with Big Picture Media, which was a blast. And the rest of it's really just about keeping open ears. You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you have any artists in mind that you want to check out while you're here, or you haven't seen the schedule yet?
Yeah, not any ones in particular. I mean, what we're basically doing is picking a single act at a particular venue and just kind of sticking around and seeing who comes on after that.
Favorite venue in New York City? Do you have one?
No, I've got a few. I love Music Hall of Williamsburg. Really like Mercury Lounge a lot. Bowery Ballroom's great. The nice thing about now is there's so many great sound people in town now that venues where you might not necessarily be seeing a good show, you will get a good show because they're bringing in better sound guys. So it's nice to be surprised.
Excellent. Great. Well, hey, thanks for taking some time out of your day here and joining us in the Artist Lounge at CMJ.
Thanks so much.